So that's just some stuff about North Carolina. And I know, looking at it, you look at 62 million since 1973 and 3,000 lives a day. And, how can we as Christians possibly stand against that much violence and death in any meaningful way, right? And the answer is you cannot, okay? If you go at it thinking you're going to save the world from abortion, you are going to fail miserably and very quickly and get very tired, right? Only the Lord can stop abortion in our nation, but he uses his church to do it. And so we need to be prepared to address abortion when it comes up, to shed light on the issue whenever we have the opportunity, and to jump into action when God opens a door for your group to act, right? And a lot of those doors are going to be through conversation. And so we will talk a little bit about sidewalk counseling in a minute, and maybe just basic pro-life outreach. But I did want to first address how you simply talk to someone about abortion. Because I've had a lot of Christians say things to me like, I'm pro-life, but I don't feel comfortable talking about abortion. I'm not sure I'm the person that can talk about it. And what that usually means is that they don't feel like they have any really solid ground to launch into this serious discussion, right? Lots of people feel that way. But you don't need to be a theologian to discuss abortion with someone who disagrees with you, okay? Or a coworker, or someone who just has questions about it, a fellow Christian who isn't sure what they know or don't know about abortion, right? Our job is just to offer truth, okay? And truth is very simple most times, right? Abortion has built this huge cloud of rhetoric around what it is that you have to fight against all the time. But the basic truth is that abortion is wrong because it takes the innocent life of a defenseless child. Okay. And the key word here is a child. Even though every person you talk to that says they're pro-choice or pro-abortion that are going to talk to you, every single one of them is going to want to talk about the woman. Okay. But it's the child that makes abortion wrong. So you want to start there and you want to stay there. All right. So no matter what issue a person throws at you regarding abortion, it's your job to remind them that abortion is only wrong if the child is human. Okay. So we all know we wouldn't allow a mother to kill her 4-year-old just because she was too ill to care for him, or because her circumstances were too challenging, which are things we hear for defending abortion. Just the same way you wouldn't allow a murderer to go free after killing 3 people because he argued that his circumstances were too challenging, or that the person he killed was dependent on him and therefore he was able to choose if they lived or died, right? Murder is not wrong because of the murderer. It's wrong because of the loss of an innocent human life. And I use the word innocent a lot because people try to throw in the death penalty or maybe the idea of war. Those are different playing fields, okay? Those are different discussions. We're talking about abortion as the loss of an innocent human life, unprotected and even unable to defend itself, okay? So if the child in the womb isn't a real human person, then abortion is just another medical procedure and we can all sit down. But if that child is a full human person, that changes everything. Then abortion is undoubtedly murder, plain and simple. And that's what you want people to, that's what they have to come to see, okay? So Scott Klusendorf is a pro-life apologist, has a very weird last name, Klusendorf. It'll be on the handout. And so he does an argument that he calls the 5-minute pro-lifer. And it's the word SLED, right? And this is something that you can use anytime. When someone talks to you about whether or not a child in the womb is a full human person, every argument they throw at you is going to fall into these 4 categories. Okay, so SLED, it's size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependency. Okay, so size is, people say all the time, they say, oh, well, it's too small. It can't really be a human. It's the size of a pea. How can something the size of a pea be human, right? Well, that's true. Embryos are much smaller than full-grown adults, right? But is that a plumb line for whether or not abortion is right or wrong? You have to take that and you have to look at that to its fullest conclusion. So men are usually larger than women, right? But that doesn't mean that men are more human or have more rights because they're bigger, right? Let's say you had someone who had dwarfism or was a little person. They don't have less rights and they're not less of a person because they're smaller, right? Our size is not in any way how we equate our value, okay? So that can't be the reason. Well, then they'll throw at you, well, so then that moves the level of development. Well, it's not self-aware. The fetus isn't self-aware, so it isn't human. Okay, that is true. Embryos and fetuses are less aware than, say, a 14-year-old or a 65-year-old, but that isn't a good plumb line either, right? Because let's say you're asleep. A sleeping person is far less aware than an awake person. It does not make them less human. A person in a coma is not less human because they are now in a coma. A person who has Alzheimer's, they are not self-aware. They are not less human because they have Alzheimer's, all right? So that's not going to be a good plumb line either. It doesn't work across the board. So then they'll switch to environment, right? Well, that's fine, whatever. It's only human if it's out of the womb. So the fetus is only human once it's outside the womb. Okay, that's environment, that's location. I don't become less human because I go up in a plane in the air, right? Because I changed location, because at a higher altitude. It doesn't make me less human, right? And there's about 8 inches from the uterus to the outside world. So in which part of those 8 inches did they become fully human, right? And if you ask somebody that, they're not going to be able to tell you, okay? They're not going to know when, they're not going to have an answer for that. And I always ask people that. I say, well, when do you think life begins? And I ask this question too. When they say they can't prove that, I say, then why aren't we erring on the side of caution if we can't prove when life begins? Don't you think it's far more dangerous that we start after the point when life might begin than to back all the way up to conception and to make sure that everyone is safe? So that's one of the arguments, right? Then they're going to go to degree of dependency. And this is a big one. This is viability, right? A fetus can't live on its own, so it's not human, okay? Well, if our value in humanity is based on our dependency, then I'm in a lot of trouble because I have hypothyroid and I'm dependent upon a pharmacist to give me medication to treat it. And I'm dependent upon a doctor that I have to go to tell that pharmacist that he will give me the medication, right? So I'm dependent on other people to be an independent person that can live a healthy life, right? So that can't be a good plumb line either. That means that if you're diabetic, let's say you have a pump, you're dependent upon that pump. You can't live without it. That doesn't make you less human, right? If you have to have dialysis, you're dependent upon that dialysis to make sure that you can live. So again, it doesn't work across the board. And you're gonna want to, three tips that I always offer people is, one, you cannot let the opposing opinion knock you off course, okay? So a good debater never deviates from the main point. Scott Klusendorf says all the time, keep the main thing the main thing. The main thing is the life of the child, right? So in all 4 of these arguments, you're always leading them back to the life of the child. Is it a child or not? Is it a human or not, okay? And that's where you want to stay. Rape and incest, bodily autonomy, even the existence of God. You don't need to prove that. All right. And if you set out to prove the existence of God to somebody that you're talking to about abortion, you've already lost. All right. That is not going to happen. Right. Your only job is to show them in a logical manner that a child is a full human person. I'd even say your only job really is to create a reasonable doubt in their mind. So then they walk away from that conversation, God has the open door to start working on them and saying, maybe what you believe is wrong. Maybe it doesn't add up. Okay. And if they can come to know that a child is a full human person, that is going to destroy every other justification for abortion, all right? And a lot of times in the conversation, I will ask somebody, do you think there's any chance that you will ever believe a child in the womb is a full human person? And if they say no, I say, well, then this conversation's over, because you will always find a way to justify abortion unless you believe that child is a human person, okay? As long as that humanity is gone. And look, they knew that in Roe v. Wade. I don't know if any of you have ever read the opinions of Roe v. Wade, but if you read them, the judges actually went through and they looked at all these philosophers through all of time, right? And they actually say in there, if all these guys couldn't decide when life begins, then what would us 9 judges be able to decide? And they moved away. They dismissed the life of the child and they focused on the mother, okay? And that's been the conversation ever since. And abortion, they are so worried. You have to also imagine 1973, we didn't have 4D ultrasounds. We didn't have a lot of technology that we have today. It is much harder to argue today that a child in the womb is not a human person than it was in 1973. And the abortion industry knows that. It's why they're terrified that Roe v. Wade will get overturned, because they know that science is not even on their side anymore, okay? And so that's our job. If you're talking to somebody, that's what you want to talk to them about. That's the most important point you could give them. Also challenge the person, like I said, to follow through on their own statement's natural conclusion. You want to ask them a lot of open-ended questions that let them explain to you what they believe. Okay, let them explain it. Like when I asked someone, well, when do you think abortion is wrong? Do you think it's wrong at 9 months? Those two teenage girls that stopped to talk to us, they did not believe that abortions at 9 months happened in our country. They were shocked to believe that. They said, when I asked them if they believed in abortion up to 9 months, they said, oh, that doesn't happen. Nobody's doing that. And I said, absolutely, people are. Okay. A lot of people, they just don't know when they make a statement like they're pro-choice.
She's married to Matthew.
About it. So you got to help them think through it, you know, and unpack that idea. So a couple things that I would stay away from when you're talking to people. Sometimes you might hear people say, well, I bet you're glad that your mom, you know, let you have life, or I bet you're glad that you got to be born. Or, you know, that famous quote of that, I've noticed that everyone that's for abortion is already born. For young people especially, that's going to be a conversation ender, okay? The problem is, while it's a good point, they already believe their mother had the choice, okay? So what choice she would have made has no impact on them. And if they were aborted, they wouldn't have known it. That's what they'll tell you, right? So that's not going to be an effective way to get them to consider if a child in the womb is a full human person. Another one you hear a lot is, well, what if Beethoven or some other genius had been aborted, right? Steve Jobs was adopted, the man who gave us the iPhone. What if his mother had aborted him, all right? Again, this is a good point that every pro-life person would immediately grasp, would immediately understand. Of course, yes, human life has true value. Humans contribute to our society. It's important that we let every single one of them have that chance. But for a person who's thinking more along the lines of pro-abortion, it's not going to have an effect on them, because it doesn't matter if what matters is that the woman had the choice. So, you know, you can't know, just that can't be reason. And I'll tell you what they'll do. Some of them, if they're very clever, will turn that around on you and say, conversely, well, what if Hitler had been aborted? Wouldn't that have been great? We could have saved millions of lives if Hitler had only been aborted, okay? So it's just not going to be a point that's going to lead them to a logical conclusion, even though it's not necessarily a bad point, all right? The third one, and hear this one very carefully, because Anglicans for Life, Georgette Forney, they do a lot of work with Silent No More, so I'm not in any way saying that it is not good to tell your story. But when you're coming to these one-on-one conversations, sometimes people just use the argument, well, women regret abortion. That is true. Women do regret abortion. Regret is not a basis for morality. So you're not going to really be effectively convincing anybody, because when you say that women regret abortion, what that person is going to hear is some women regret abortion. Because especially if there's someone who's adamantly for abortion, they probably have someone in their lives that has chosen abortion at some point. It could even be themselves, right? And so for them, they're going to know someone that they can counter that with, like, well, my mom had an abortion, she never regretted it, right? My sister had an abortion. It was the best thing that ever could have happened to her. She hasn't had any regrets, which isn't true. She might not be able to recognize the sorrow that she's carrying yet, but you're not going to convince them that way. If you are going to talk about women in abortion, I would suggest talking about, if you know, again, knowing your facts, the psychological effects of abortion, if you know the statistics for that, the increase of the rate of depression and suicide in women who have had an abortion, that's something that you can talk about. And if you want to talk about how abortion affects, you know, the breast cancer rate and the ovarian cancer rate, how that's connected, you know, then that's something you can talk about. But if you're the woman who's had the abortion, that's a different story. You can't argue with experience. That can be a powerful moment to tell your story. That's why Silent No More is powerful, okay? Because women say, I've been down that road, and this is what happened to me. This is my story. And so women who've either had abortions or are considering them, they can hear that, and they can hear this voice of experience, right? But if you're not the woman who has had an abortion, and your basic argument is women regret abortion, so it is bad, you're just not going to get very far. And also it's going to lead you away from talking about the life of the child, which is what we're trying to avoid, okay? The third thing is that I encourage people to remember is that truth is compassion, right? Our society teaches us today that to disagree with someone or to be is synonymous with being unkind, right? To challenge an opposing opinion is rude, it's bigoted. People do not look kindly on people who challenge other people's opinions. But we have to consider Jesus flipping the tables, right? Which is really our go-to example, Jesus flipping the tables in the temple. But even more than that, consider him challenging the Pharisees when they were about to stone the woman who was caught in adultery. Or even more than that, consider him rebuking his own disciples, which he did very often, right? Jesus wasn't being unkind or rude or bigoted. He was loving the people he came to save by steering them away from evil, okay? And so to challenge wrongdoing is to open the door for God's light to shine. And to offer the truth that every human is worthy of life, that is to challenge, that is to challenge someone's understanding and to give them the message of Christ, okay? And in Christ, he deemed us worthy to save, right? Through his death and resurrection. We're in the season of Easter. Well, we're only doing what we saw our Savior do. And he only did what he saw his Father do, right? And we are promised that the world will hate you for it, okay? Conversations, if you enter into a conversation about abortion, it might not go great. The two teenagers that we talked to, that Susan talked about, they did not leave happy. We spoke for a while, and I hope those ideas resonate with them when they leave. And I prayed for that girl, especially in the days after. But they were not happy when they left. They got mad and drove off. Okay, that happens. But do it anyway. Put yourself out there anyway, because we're the carriers of truth. And if not us, then who? Okay, if the church isn't willing to stand up for preborn children, and if we're not willing to challenge people on the idea that abortion is this really acceptable thing, then who is, right? So there is one other argument that you might run into, especially on college campuses, called the sovereign zone argument or bodily autonomy. You know, when you hear women say, my body, my choice, a lot of times our response is like, it's not your body. Well, my body, my choice is not really an argument about the baby. It's specifically an argument about the woman's body, okay? So when a woman is saying my body, my choice, she's saying her body is a sovereign zone. And she has complete autonomy, and nothing comes in or leaves unless by her permission, okay? Nothing affects it unless by her permission. So if someone believes that, they might very well concede that, yeah, a child in the womb is a full human person, probably has rights, but their rights will never trump the right of the mother because it's her body, all right? And when you first hear that, you might be like, wait a second, they already believe the child is a human person in the womb, so now what do I do, right? But you do the same thing. You unpack that idea for them, right? If we are to say that our plumb line is that bodily autonomy is the end all be all, it's the thing that makes abortion okay, well, then how far are they willing to take that? All right, let's say a woman has a child, she's pregnant, and she wants to disfigure that child so that they have a life as a handicapped child. Would they say that that's acceptable? Most people would not say that that's acceptable, by the way, unless they really just don't want to unless they really just aren't really having a truthful conversation with you. Or how about if a woman was angry at her boyfriend and they broke up halfway through the pregnancy, and she decided that to get back at him, she was going to wait till she was 9 months pregnant and then have the most painful way possible to have an abortion for that child, just out of spite. Because bodily autonomy, it allows for that. So you have to ask people, like, how far are you taking this? And you can unpack that idea, okay? No, most people will tell you that's crazy. They would never support that. Some people might just say that they will. Those people are not interested in talking to you. If somebody's like, yeah, whatever, I do whatever, that's not. So, which brings us to our point of when do you walk away, right? Some people just want to argue for the sake of arguing. If it's clear to you that you're not having a fruitful conversation, then walk away and let God have it. Pray for another. If it's someone, especially if it's a coworker, someone you see that brings it up to you and that challenges you, and they obviously don't want to think about it, then just wait. Just wait until God opens up another door. It's okay to do that, okay? You don't have to convince that person in one conversation. You probably won't convince them in one conversation, okay? Also, if for any reason you're getting entirely too angry or upset, that you can't keep your cool, then definitely you need to leave it alone and let God have it, okay? Because when people talk about abortion, emotions run high, all right? And so if you don't stay level-headed, it can get out of control very fast. When that man stopped to talk to me last year, he was so angry. If I had responded to him in anger, and he was being very intimidating. He got out, he took pictures of my car. At one point in the conversation, he asked me where I lived. He wanted to make this point, I think, that I was privileged. I actually lived in like the worst part of town in Birmingham possible. But when I told him that, he said he didn't care anymore. So, I mean, he was just angry, right? But if I had bickered with him, then that could have gotten out of hand. But I stayed calm and I just answered his questions and I just challenged him a little bit, and that conversation went really well. I had a guy stop on that same sidewalk who had no intention of talking to me. I had an intern with me. I just told that intern about the hostility and violence that you could experience from a pro-abortion person. Literally just had this conversation with him, and this guy drove up and for 45 minutes cussed us out and told us all kinds of things, called us all kinds of names, wouldn't leave. I mean, would not. I mean, he cussed out the security guard. He had no interest in talking. I didn't talk to him. I did record him a lot, and which he was like, I see you recording me, and I said, you're being very aggressive. I have to record you. I don't know what you're gonna do, And this guy was a bully. He just wanted to bully us. So we stayed for a while, and we eventually left. And so you gotta have your wits about you, But don't, if someone's angry, if they're getting very out of hand, don't try to poke the fire, and if you're getting upset, definitely just walk away and let God handle that. Susan also wanted me to hit on just some activities on the sidewalk and at the clinic. And I'll just talk about that a little bit and then we'll have some time for questions. There are 4 reasons that you want to be outside specifically at the clinic. Okay. One is going to be awareness. So going out to the clinic to hold signs that passersby can see, and they now know that there's an abortion clinic there. Okay. They might respond negatively to that. When we were out there, when I was out with Susan, we had quite a few people yell quite a few expletives as they drove by. That's okay. Because the other people that are seeing it are people that might agree with you. They might be sympathetic. And now they know that there's an abortion clinic there and they know there's a reason to pray. Okay. Just like the Planned Parenthood where we've been out, is this construction site. It's not labeled Planned Parenthood. So we have these signs that say it's an abortion clinic, and I cannot tell you how many people stopped by in that neighborhood who had no idea that a Planned Parenthood was being built and were very upset about it. And this was actually in an African-American neighborhood, and the people that live there know. One guy actually said, you know who they target, right? And I said, yes, sir, I absolutely know. That's why I'm out here, because I don't want them to build this building. So it's important to be out there and let people know what's going on. Sidewalk counseling, of course, is one reason to be out there. That's when you actually go out to the clinic, specifically to engage the women going in, offer them pro-life literature, prayer, be a listening ear. This, of course, should always be done in love and with compassion, right? We never want to yell at a woman going into a clinic. One, because you sound mean, but also that woman is scared and desperate. And if 5 people or even one person is yelling at her, she's going to walk faster to that clinic. She's just going to walk as fast as she possibly can. She wants to get out of there. She doesn't want to be there to begin with, right? So you don't want to chase her into the clinic by yelling at her. And that's difficult. Any of you have been on the sidewalk, if you've been out there with other groups, there's always that one guy that's out there who wants to yell. And he's usually an older guy. I hate to stereotype. And that's actually, I will say that's not always true. I've seen younger people do it too. But it's not effective. And another thing that I think sidewalk counseling in your local community struggles with is having one person at a time talk to that woman. I know that sounds really simple, but you'd be surprised how many communities have like 5 people try to talk to her, not yelling, just all trying to talk to her at one time. She's not going to hear anything. She will hear if one person is saying, ma'am, can I give you some literature before you go in? Can I just talk to you? Can I pray with you before you go in? She's more likely to hear that one voice than she is to hear 4 or 5 people who all of a sudden are like, oh, ma'am, so those are just some practical things. The third reason, of course, is prayer, right? You're going out to that clinic. It doesn't mean you have to sidewalk counsel. Let's say you don't feel like you're ready or you don't feel like you're called to do that, okay? To be totally honest, I would not say sidewalk counseling is my gift. I do not think I'm very good at it. I can do it. I will do it if no one else is there. But if there's someone there that is better than me, I am more than happy to be the prayer support, because I do much better with the teenage girls who were angry and drove by. I'm much better with that than I am with just women going in. But when you do pro-life work, sometimes you gotta go outside of your comfort zone. So if I'm the only one there, I'll do it. I'll ask, ma'am, can I talk to you? Can I pray for you? But you don't have to be the sidewalk counselor if you go out there. Okay. I think some people think if they go out there, that's what they have to do. And you can just go and pray. You can just be prayer support. You can pray for the women that are going in. There have been women who have stopped with the 40 days in Birmingham and all they did was see somebody praying. all they did was see someone standing outside the clinic praying. That's the only sign they needed. They didn't go get the abortion that day, you know? So just being out there, your presence really makes a difference. And the sidewalk is a great place to bring your prayers because you become Christ incarnate on that sidewalk, right? We're all little Christs. That's what Christians are. And so when you're out there, that's the fourth reason, right? The church is God's hands and feet on this earth, okay? So you can pray at home and God will hear you, of course. But what you can't do from home is be the physical presence of Christ in a place that is full of pain, despair, and darkness, okay? Your presence, it makes a difference even if you can't see it, because there's a whole spiritual battle going on that little plot of land that you can't see, all right? And it especially makes a difference to that little child who's been abandoned to death. Your being there, it means they didn't face death alone, okay? Someone came to acknowledge and honor their little life, all right? And that matters. It matters a lot. And so never feel like your time on the sidewalk is wasted. Never feel like just because, well, all I did was go out there and pray. No, what you did was go out there and be Christ. You did your job. That's what you did, okay? A couple of things to remember about being on the sidewalk, or just really any pro-life event. One, you want to know the law, right? You want to be aware that your event is within the law. If it's a rally or a vigil or a march or whatever. And you know, that might mean calling ahead, that might mean getting permits or stuff like that. But you want to be the person that knows what you're doing. Okay. If a cop were to show up, someone called the cops and said, you guys were, you know, not supposed to be on the sidewalk. Like, you want to know that, yes, I'm allowed to be out here. That goes a lot further than a cop just coming and saying like, oh man, you can't be here. And you just say, oh, well, I thought I could be, you know, like you want to insist I know I'm allowed to be here. Okay. If it's a public sidewalk. But you want to be aware of what the laws are. Or like, I think, for example, in Durham, there's a certain size sign that you have to have. Signs can only be like a certain size. So you want to know, you just want to make sure you know that stuff. Also, be ready to record, all right, at any event where there's going to be a counter protester. Let's say, and this is why I don't tell people to go out to pray on the sidewalk by themselves. I usually encourage people to take somebody with them, have a buddy, because one, it's good for you to be out there together, but two, it's your word against theirs if something happens. Like, let's say an escort, this actually happened to my boss, an escort. Now he wasn't out there by himself. I was there and some other people, but she was walking in, she was in his face. And so she was like this close to him. And she was walking backwards down the sidewalk and he was trying to walk past her to talk to a woman and she just stopped moving, right? So he like bumped her and went around her. That's what happened. Like, she just stopped moving and he just went, oh, and he like bumped her and went around her. Well, she went in the clinic. Cop showed up a little while later, a cop that we knew, who showed up pretty often, who was a great cop and Christian. And so we told him, he said, what happened? And Father Terry told him exactly what happened. Well, they came out and what they told this cop was that Father Terry shoved her to the ground. And we're all like, that is not what happened. He did not, like, he bumped into her. He did not shove her to the ground. Even more crazy for this particular clinic is they had a video camera and the cop watched the video and he was like, what you told me isn't true. Like I'm looking at the your own video footage. And they were so mad that he wouldn't arrest Father Terry. They were you just don't know. I'm telling you, when people decide that it's okay to kill a child, that's a kind of evil that you give yourself over to, and a deception that it just leads to more and more deception. And that girl, she 100%, if you could saw the conviction in her face, she believed that that's what happened, that he pushed her down to the ground. And that is not what happened at all. He literally just slightly bumped her. So you want to have someone in your group who is ready to record if something like that is happening. So that way you just have a log of it. You know, it's never going to be your word versus theirs. It's good for you to be wise in that way. Okay. And then the third thing is, of course, pray, right? God works through the prayers of his people. So if you know you have an event coming up in a week, be praying about that event. Ask people in your church who maybe can't come if they'll just cover it in prayer for you. All right. Pray before you go, pray while you're there, offer up Thanksgiving afterwards, right? Prayer is key. It is a key component. You will not get very far in the pro-life movement without prayer. So I know I've given you guys a lot to process, but I'm going to stop there and I'll open this up for any questions. And like I said before, you can ask me anything. It does not have to be directly related to what I just talked about. I'm here at your service.